Europe creates some of the greatest scientific discoveries on the planet, and yet most never reach the people they were made for. They stay locked in labs, in institutions, in PowerPoint decks, while other regions turn ideas into billion-dollar companies. Why? Because innovation doesn't change the world, commercialization does. In today's episode, we explore how Europe can bridge that gap, how science becomes scale, and how ideas become impact. My guest at BioEurope this week has led through some of the toughest moments in modern history, from the pandemic and energy crisis to diplomatic missions during the war between Ukraine and Russia. Now, our former Chancellor Karl Nehammer, in his new role as Vice President of the European Investment Bank, brings that experience to one mission: building a Europe that competes and wins through innovation. Europe produces excellence but struggles to scale it. Every year, talent and technology slip through the cracks. The solution? Investment, leadership, and a mindset shift at the highest level, one that Karl is now driving from inside the European Investment Bank. Today, he shares how leadership forged in crisis can rebuild confidence, competitiveness, and growth. But before we dive in, I have looked at the numbers, and only about 20% of listeners actually follow the show. If you are one of the 80% who listens but hasn't yet clicked follow, do me a small favor. Hit that button now. It helps this show to grow, and it lets me bring you more of these rare behind-the-scenes conversations with the people shaping the future of deep tech and science, entirely for free. So, how do we turn Europe's brilliance into global leadership? Let's find out. Here is my conversation with Karl Nehammer, Vice President of the European Investment Bank. First, the COVID pandemic. Then, when I thought it was over and we can move forward into the future, Russia attacked Ukraine, and you were the first political leader who had the guts to travel to Kyiv, meeting President Zelensky, and then travels directly to Moscow, negotiating with Putin, working hard on ending this crisis. But that was not all. The third part that you had in your career as Chancellor was managing the energy crisis. And also there you took the initiative and traveled to Qatar and worked hard on improving Austria's energy independence. And when you think about your role as a Chancellor, what lessons can you take with you into your new position at the European Investment Bank?
Well, it's a good question. I think that every crisis is a chance as well, you know. When I became a federal chancellor, the ceremony was with masks. Unbelievable today. And you mentioned it. Then there was the end of the pandemic. We saw the chance that we can overcome it. And in February, the Russian aggression against Ukraine started. To this time, we had an energy dependence on Russian gas of 80%. The storages were not filled anymore. The Russian storages hadn't been filled because of strategic reasons. So it was really a lot of pressure. But what do I mean that every crisis is also maybe a chance? You learn a lot. You have to decide quick. And you have always to think sometimes really in totally new ways. Because for all these crises, there were no guidebook. And so you have to try to find new solutions, think out of the box. And I think this kind of experience I now bring also in the EIB.
Yeah, that's true. I like that every crisis is also a chance and opportunity. You grew up in Vienna, and I'm pretty sure you are accustomed with the Viennese culture. We have one beloved tradition that's probably a little bit hidden. We don't talk much about it. I'm talking about the Viennese Sudan. We don't look at the positive things of life first. We always skip the good part and go straight to the bad part, and criticism and negativity, especially ranting in a bar, is our hobby. You have a lot of experience talking with leaders as a politician from east to west, from China, Russia, Ukraine, the United States. And I have spent the last 25 years building deep tech companies, and on my podcast had over 200 conversations with business leaders. I have an opinion about what's wrong with Europe, and I'm now curious to hear your opinion. Why can't we commercialize Europe's top-notch, world-class science in the same way the US does and produce companies like NVIDIA or Tesla that have a tremendous market capitalization? How do you see that?
I think the question is a little bit the answer as well. You described the problem as it is. I think that we have to look at this like a coin. It has two sides, you know. You are right, we have a lot of challenges to face. I mean, we are really great in research and science, and afterwards we see that if we have startups, they don't stay. They go to the United States, for example. And this has a lot of reasons. And I think we have the knowledge now what we have to change. And I think it's kind of window of opportunity now, because we are under pressure. We are between the United States, we are between China. We have a lot of things to do now. We have too high energy costs, for example. We fight for every investor now to invest in the European Union. And so this kind of pressure, this is now the good thing, I think will lead that we have to do what we have to do now. This means we have to reduce the regulations, we have to speed up, we have to do what we talked about, I think, years, you know, the capital market. We have to find ways to increase risk capital in Europe. We have to change culture. This is not easy. We have a totally different culture than if you compare to the United States. But I think now this time is really a chance as well that these processes are now going on. These discussions are now in the EU Parliament, in the Commission, in the member states. So I think we are now starting to do the right things.
That's good to hear. So the energy is already there and Europe is moving forward. That's good to hear. And I totally agree to all your points. When we look at this event today, Bio Europe, we have a lot of people here from life science, investors, entrepreneurs, and they did a tremendous job during the pandemic and accomplished something that I thought is impossible, to deliver so many doses of vaccines and diagnostic tests in such a short time. When we look into the future that you described, where we need to change a lot, what lessons do you see in this industry that we learned during the pandemic that we can take with us into the future?
To start with the positive. The pandemic showed that if the pressure is really high, we can act fast in the European Union. And it was great to see how the shared knowledge worked, how scientists all over the world, especially in the European Union, shared their knowledge. The goal was to find a vaccine against COVID. And we did it. So this is a very positive aspect, I think. On the other side, the pandemic, COVID, showed us in a brutal way how fragile we are if we think about supply chains. And I think this we have as well to solve. And it's not easy, because it doesn't mean that we will have a totally independence of what we need. But we also now think about new ways to be more prepared if such a situation is coming again. But it's still a way. We are not there where we want to be. But I think you can see that if we really have the willing to solve a problem, a catastrophe like COVID was, then we can do it. And I'm really totally convinced about that. We have to think about our strengths. We have to think about our brilliance, and if you think about research and innovation. And with this knowledge about that, we have to create this kind of new ways we are talking about. But you know, you mentioned Sudan. You know, Sudan is a typical Austrian term. Yeah, we call everything is bad, and there is no hope, and okay, well, let's see, maybe it's the last day. Yeah, okay. But if you look around, it's not only an Austrian phenomenon now. It's not a Viennese phenomenon. It's a European. And to overcome a crisis, you have to think about how you can solve the problem and not live in the problem. That's the point. And if you look around in our member states, you can see so many interesting and fantastic ways to overcome a problem, to solve a problem, to think out of the box, to build a new frame, that we have to use this kind of power. It makes no sense to see each other all the time and to complain. I think the only chance we have to overcome a problem is to think about how we solve it and not how we suffer. This is I think this is the key point, how we can overcome. And the pandemic showed us that it is possible. And I think this is the most important point.
Good points. I didn't know that it's a phenomenon all over Europe now, so that our culture spread out. Really? Oh God, oh God. It's great to have you here, because I mean, when I listen to politicians, they always say, we can do that, and we can do this. But now I'm curious. When we look into the future, I would like to ask you one question personally. What is your personal vision for Europe? How do you see Europe evolving in the future?
Easy questions today. You know, I think we have to accept Europe as it is. And it means 27 member states. 27 member states which try to find solutions. If you look around the world, it's a unique construction. It's not possible to compare it with others. 27 democracies. Democracies are a minority in the world. So what do I mean? You know, if you have some elite discussions, you will hear the European has to do this, the European has to do that, the European Union has to improve, maybe to be the United States of Europe in the future, whatever. But we have to be careful, because it's always a question also of expectations. And if we overload the expectations, the EU cannot win. So what I mean is, let us focus to that what we really want to reach, a real single market, the same rules for the member states, a capital market. This is huge to do. Let us solve this kind of problems first. I'll give you an example. Did you know that we don't have in our single market, 27 member states, the same railway standards? Did you know that? So, if you ask me what is my vision, let us do our job. Let us build a real single market. Let us build a good functioning infrastructure. Let's try to overcome the really difficult and different rules in the finance market to build a capital market. And this is so important because we need risk capital, for example. So let us do these things. Let us thinking about how we can solve this. And this is really not easy. But let us also see that this 27 member states, this construction of EU is unique. It's fantastic if you think about history. In Austria now, we have a special year. The war ended 80 years ago. We are free since 70 years. And we are a member of the European Union since 30 years. And this means 80 years peace, 70 years freedom and democracy, and 30 years of membership in a union which also give us in real a vision how we can live together, how we can solve problems, how we can build a strong economy, how we come over this totally crazy situation which now exists in the world. So I think if we think about the union, if we think about the future, let us see what we can do now, not within 10, 20, 15, 30 years. I think it makes no sense. So let us solve the problems which we have. Let us build what we want to build and what is the fundament and the foundation of the European Union. And then I think we will be able to create new visions. But let us do the jobs first.
That's great. I like your energy and your positivity. When we look at the European Investment Bank, what impact do you personally want to make at the bank in the future?
First of all, I have to mention we are a group. You know, there's the European Investment Bank and there is the EIF, the European Investment Fund. And this is really fascinating to see what this group is doing now and what the group can do in the future. I think what we try now is to build bridges, to try what we can to help startups to find constant finance, you know, and that we try to help the economy in the union to restructure, to transform, to be a partner. I think this is the most important thing, what we want to be and what we are. The EIB and the EIF, we are partners for the economy, but also for the member states in their vision. And I think there is a lot to do. You can always become better. Yeah, that's also true. But I'm now there for 2 months, you know. But I'm really deeply impressed. I'm deeply impressed about the quality of the staff, the high expertise, the advisory, and I think this makes hope, you know, that we are really also in the future a trustable partner for the companies, but also for the member states.
Future and hope, these are great words. Today is also a chance to celebrate the entrepreneurs in life science and the investors, especially the women in life science. And when you look around the room, as my last question to you, what message do you want to give the people building the future with you?
Maybe it sounds too pathetic, but believe in you. I mean, empower you, you know. You see, if you have a strong will, you can overcome also hurts. So I think we have, if you think 30 years back in the past, so many things changed. And you see how powerful, how important, how strong women are in our society. And not in our society, everywhere you look around. So if you have a strong will, you have to create opportunities. That's the job of politics. You know, if you ask a CEO how he thinks about that, it is what it is the best thing what can happen is that you have various employees, women and men, different cultures, different experiences, because it's good for the business and it's good for the society. So what I wish for you is as well, empower yourself. Don't wait for another person. You can do it yourself. I think that is the most important thing.
That's a perfect message to start. Thank you, Karl, for this conversation.